The just right mentality is one of the most toxic cliches in the writing world. And if we are all trying to reach our highest potential as authors, if we are trying to create transformative works that can change the world, just writing, just putting tens of thousands of hours into our craft is not going to be enough, because I would first and foremost like to bring up the most potent example of why this doesn't work, and that is the genre nerds. Because guess what, you guys? I love Malazan, I love Dune and Hyperion and Lord of the Rings and so many other genre works, and they are transformative. They are the greatest, some of the greatest pieces of literature ever written. But when I look at the army of fantasy and romance and science fiction authors that have put in tens of thousands of hours. All they have done is just write, and all they have written over the course of decades is a bunch of crap. It starts to make me wonder, is just writing enough? And if you guys don't know, my name is Ian, and here on Write Conscious, I am helping kick off a literary renaissance. And the way we do that, first and foremost, is look to the past. We look at what authors did before us. We respect them, we elevate them, we stand on their shoulders so that we can get to the next level. And I don't want this to sound like a yoga class, but with writing, it all starts with intention. And what do I mean by that? Well, whatever your intention is, wherever you are trying to go, the end goal is going to determine how you practice and how you approach the page every single day. And a good example of this is professional sports. There are guys who are hobbyists who play whatever sport for a couple hours every single day. And they've maybe been playing that sport since middle school. But then there are the champions. Then there are the other people who practice and think, like Kobe, like so many others, that they are going to get a scholarship, that they are going to be an All-American, that they are going to be a professional one day. And how they approach their time is much, much different. And more importantly, and what I want to talk about first and foremost right now, is they have an intention on the court or on the page, but they also center their entire life around that goal. And I know this is a generalization, but when I think of the unhealthy dude that's locked himself in a room and is just writing his fantasy novels, he's not worried about his health. He's not worried about gaining expansive experiences and many other things we'll talk about in this video out in the world. And for some reason, while I was cleaning the house the other day, because my wife just gave birth, so I'm on cleaning duty 100% of the time, I got sucked into listening to a Kobe Bryant interview. But he said something that is so insightful for all of us. He said that no matter where he was, including in English class, he was just thinking about basketball. No matter what, everything was about basketball. And one of his high school English teachers was a master of story, was a really good person in regards to story. And so he took her seriously because he realized that changing his attention, changing how he viewed himself through story and learning about heroes and these things would actually be important if he was going to reach the pinnacle of his profession. And I would like to ask you right now, I would like to ask all the people out there who are just in the just right mentality, are you centering your entire life around writing? And even more so, I really want to piss some people off right now, not to set that intention. But when I look at the bookshelf behind me, and I repeat this a lot on this channel, many of the people I talk about were born, had an intention in the womb to be great. What did your parents do for you? Because I know my parents weren't thinking that I was going to be a writer or they just thought I was going to hopefully have a six-figure job and get a master's degree one day. But when Cormac McCarthy came out of the womb, his dad was a valedictorian of the Yale Law School, excuse me. And if you want a fun exercise, go Google the Yale Law School and look at the Wikipedia page and see all the presidents, senators, politicians, and powerful people who went to the Yale Law School. How about Toni Morrison, who didn't start writing her first novel or releasing her first novel until her 40s? Well, her parents, when she was young, gave her Jane Austen and Leo Tolstoy. She was very active in school. She went to Cornell. She was a professor. She was an editor at Random House before she ever started writing seriously. She understood what it took and the mentality you needed to become a professional. And so if you have the right intention, you can shortcut, you can overcome, you can just write and get good in a lot less time than if you're just sitting down on the page and screwing around. And the axiomatic goal of the literary renaissance is to write transformative things, to be wake up artists for the world, to not just do art for art's sake, which is kind of a cousin or kind of downstream of the just right mentality. You're just writing and putting your thoughts out there. But instead, if you say, I'm going to put something out there that's going to wake people up so we can create an educational and spiritual awakening and make the world a better place, you are going to sit down and write different shit. You are going to sit down and be better. I hate to say it like that, but that's how it is. So I could sit here and maybe I should. Like maybe you guys need it. Maybe I need to sit for 5 hours and go over author by author, all the people who are on the top 100 list, and there will be a couple outliers, but almost every single one of them was raised to be great, was shown the mentality of greatness at the start of their life. Dostoevsky, raised to be great. He had a downfall, which made him even better. Tolstoy, raised to be great. Many of us were not raised that way, so we have to do catch up. We can't just be writing. We can't just think that getting to the page every day is good enough, because that's where we're at. We have so many problems with our dopamine. We think we have so many ADHD problems that just show we've reduced ourselves so much because of the pressure and the social anxiety and all the other problems, that if you just get to the table every day, that's enough. That's where we're at right now. Are the competition, the people who we need to be standing on the shoulders of, we're not there. That was the easy part, just sitting down. The hard part was coming up with something and living a life that could create an idea that could be canonical. And many of the authors behind me, I'm going to speak again, were not recluses. People got really mad when I made the video about writers being loners. You know, to be a writer, you have to be a loner in the sense that you have to sit down and just write. You have to sit down and put in work, and you have to be alone. You can't be talking to your wife and, you know, saying hello to the kids and watching Netflix. You have to be alone in a room. So yes, there is a lone wolf mentality. But William Faulkner was a master of the Southern dialect. Toni Morrison, master of her dialect. African-American vernacular English in its many different fashions. Ernest Hemingway was there in Europe, you know, talking like the characters and hanging out with the people that he wrote in The Sun Also Rises. David Foster Wallace was a decent author with his first few books, A Girl with Curious Hair and The Broom of the System, but it wasn't until he went to a halfway house and had to stay there for a year that he could write something like Infinite Jest. That's real life experience combined with intention, then combined with working on your writing skills, combined with time at the desk, is what actually creates a good author. I am so sorry to tell you guys that. And there are outliers. I get it. There are people like, who's that guy? Thomas Ligotti, who don't talk to anybody. But are you the 1 out of 100? Can everybody now who has social anxiety and ADHD and all these problems be the 1 out of 100? And the answer is no. And if you want to take your writing seriously, if you want to be successful, then you need all 4 of those elements. And, you know, maybe even the 5th element, which is natural talent and your upbringing, but we'll just get rid of that one because that wasn't our choice. And so let's talk about imitation, because every great athlete, every great writer had a mentor, had someone who was supporting them. No one does this alone. And the just right mentality programs that further into people's brains, that they can do this, that they saw some dude do it on Substack or on Kindle. He made some money, and so can they, and that's all that matters. And once again, that goes back to intention. Are you doing this for money? Are you doing this because you want to appear smart or don't want to work a job? If you don't want to work a job, if you want to be an artist and make some money and not work, you should just go find something that makes a lot of money and then just do art on the side with all the time that you've bought back. If you want all the smart women or men to fawn over you, then you should just go learn pickup artistry, and you could go get them anyway. And so many people do not understand how important mentors and imitation is. Why did Rilke become one of the greatest poets of all time? Because he studied under one of the greatest artists of all time, Rodin. And what did he do? He didn't just talk to him once a week. Rodin gave him a system to follow, to learn to see, that Rilke took with him and obviously refined for his own taste for the rest of his life. And so it would be great if you were like Hemingway and had Pound and Eliot and all these people around you, or whoever. But most of us are not like that. Maybe you are an antisocial type or whatever, or just it's hard to find access to these people. And so you have to do it alone. And what most people did in history was become super fans, obsessed, totally engrossed in the writings of certain people, and they loved them so much that they imitated them in their initial novels. They tried to take what those people were doing to the next level and sometimes outright stole from them. And this requires you to leave your ego at the door. This requires you to say that your ideas, your style, what you're bringing to the table is not enough because someone else before you has already done it. Someone else before you has created the playbook, figured everything out, and you are just going to add one or two new things to this, picture, at least for a while. It's not until you become a superstar that the coach starts building the playbook around you. Initially, a playbook is slightly changed based on your unique attributes. And with imitation comes reading. So many authors out there are not readers. They are not taking their reading seriously. If you are not reading 100 books a year and spending hours at the table at least a couple times a week, I can even call it 50 books a year, one book a week, which is less than an hour of reading a day. Even if you read, and you could read some tomes in there too, like, War and Peace. I just experienced this with one of my students. I've seen this happen a million times. This happens to me all the time. But he just writes. He's just a writer. Just write. And I was like, bro, and he's in my class. I was like, and sometimes when I'm like lecturing, he just is sitting and writing because like this is what's gonna make me good. And so recently, I told him, bro, I'm gonna get you in trouble if you don't stop writing because we're gonna read a book. We're gonna read The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. I want you to sit and reflect and slow down and think about what this book is about and how he was writing it. And lo and behold, he does. He's like, oh my God, that was great. Now he's rewriting something he's done in the past. He's writing like Tim O'Brien. He's bringing in some of that energy and some of those elements. And now he's writing really good. And now it's like, he was writing good anyway, but like I'm just a total transformation. This has happened to me multiple times. And it requires you to slow down. And what's funny about this situation is I'm reading the book out loud very slowly. I'm not speed reading through something. And so most likely you will need to reread books, be in a lineage, and do one-to-one imitation. And you never transcend this. And let me tell you why you never transcend this. I love this comment. Someone told me that I'm beyond imitating Cormac McCarthy. I don't need to do one-to-one imitations anymore. What is translation? Why do almost all the greatest poets and a lot of really good fiction authors do translations? Like, are you a fan of Nabokov? Would you say that Nabokov is great? I mean, he translated his own Lolita into Russian. He translated other novels. We could talk about Borges. We could talk about Murakami. We could talk about Beckett, Paul Auster, Eco, Milan Kundera, Clarice Lispector, Ezra Pound, William Carlos Williams, T.S. Eliot, Michael Hoffman. I could sit here for hours. Anne Carson, James Wright, Robert Bly. I could tell you guys for hours of people who worked on translations, who didn't even know the languages sometimes, who would just work with other people just to be in. So when Italo Calvino, Robert Lowell. Guys, when you translate something, though, I'm into translations. I just held a translation contest for the best translation. That's how much I believe in this. You bring one thing over. You're basically imitating something. You're figuring out what they're trying to say, and you're trying to match their style in your own language. That's called imitation. Why do so many people like Gunter Grass talk about why translation is so important? If you asked any of those authors who I just said, does translation help your fiction? Each one would say yes. And so there are other authors that don't do translations, like Cormac McCarthy. But Cormac McCarthy would imitate and steal lines, whole paragraphs, and ideas all the time. Same with David Foster Wallace. David Foster Wallace went so deep into imitation that it was causing him anxiety because he felt like he didn't even have his own voice, that his entire career was one of imitation. But who would know? Here we are. I have a whole channel dedicated to him. So imitation is a big thing. So if we go back and we start with intention, if you're just trying to write, you're just trying to just write. You're not thinking about your natural talent and your trauma and your upbringing. You're not thinking about translations. You're not thinking about sitting and doing one-on-one imitations. You're not thinking about building your actual writing skills through sentence structure and punctuation and style. You're not thinking that you need to put thousands of hours into studying sentence structure over the course of a decade or two, throughout your journey. You think that you already have it all. You're not thinking about how hard this game is to actually work, because guess what, everyone? People don't care. To make someone care, to be a wake-up artist requires you to do something that's never been done before, simultaneously stand on the shoulders of others, but also be connected to the moment, connected to people, and ride that wave. And unless you are the outlier, which you are not, then that's what you are going to have to do. So the just writing mentality is a bunch of BS. It always has been. It always will be. Yes, you need to put 10,000 hours in, but that is one of five things that needs to happen if you are going to take it to the next level. If you are going to actually get at the top, it starts with intention. So dream bigger, be better, join the literary renaissance, buy a gun, adopt a pit bull, write a book, rent a billboard.